Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Legendary Leaders. I am your host, Katrina Jameson. I'm the founder of Legend Leaders, where we arm female business leaders with the strategies they need to create a legendary life on their terms. All right, we are moving through the month. This month, we are focused on 2022 being your year. That's right, this is your year. It's not optional. This is your year, and we are going to make it so. Now, if you listened to me last week, you already know the path that we're on. If you didn't listen to us, go check it out. Last week was all about defining what I'm going to call your old story. You could call it your current story, but we're going to call it, from this moment forward, we're going to call it your old story. Because the story that we tell ourselves, the story that we constantly run in our brains about who we are and what life is about, defines what we do every single day. It really does. It can be an empowering story, or it can be a limiting story. And I will tell you, and again, if you listened to last week, you already know that whatever your current story is, it is both empowering and limiting. All of our stories, unless we've sat down and done this exercise and continue to do it, I would say on an annual basis, our story is going to continue to hold us back. Why? Because we keep changing. We keep growing. We keep evolving. And as we evolve, the beliefs that we have, the experiences that we have, the understandings that we have about life and who we are and who we want to be, it's evolving. But what we typically don't do is change the story that's running in our heads. We change, but we don't intentionally change our story. And therefore, we hold ourselves back. And so if this year is going to be your year, we must change your story. Now, if you recall, last week I told you about my old story, right? About being successful and that I can achieve anything, but it was a very lonely success because I never felt like I could really share that success with anyone. And, I sat down and thought through it and tried to understand why. Now, why can be a looping question that you'll never get out of. If you go and start asking yourself why, you'll never have the answer, which means you could never move forward. But what I want you to do is I really do want you to spend, and this is the challenge for today, so I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. I do want you to spend some time today understanding the parts of your story and what got you to where you are today. Now, let me explain a little bit more about what I mean by that. My story, as I mentioned, I can accomplish anything I put my mind to. My mom was always telling me that. My grandparents always told me that. My family, because I was the oldest grandchild and the firstborn, I was everything. And so they poured all this love and energy and effort into me and told me, you can be anything you want, right? All of the hopes and dreams empowered me. And that was a great part of my story. But then growing up, my biological parents divorced when I was super young. My grandfather, who I spent almost every afternoon with, passed away when I was 7. He was a big influence on my life. My brother was born when I was 8. And so there were just different things that happened in my life where I watched the people that I care about and very much love at a very young age, right? A very mentally immature age. I watched things happen and I interpreted that to have a very specific meaning. Well, people leave me, right? Or people go do other things, or you can't really count on people. And there are different experiences in my life that cause me to think that. But the key thing I want you to understand and grab onto is that you have a story, and no doubt, actually 100% of it is based off of experiences that you've had, unless you've been very intentional about creating your new story. Your story today exists because of experiences that you've had, probably when you were a kid, and you applied meaning to it that today, when you look at that situation, you'll go, it's not at all what that was. That's not what that meant. That's not what happened, right? My grandfather didn't leave me because he chose to. He passed away. That's part of life. But he loved me tremendously, and I got all of his love, and I loved him, and that was a gift, right? That wasn't him leaving me. My brother was born. My mom, spent her time with him. She had to. I have 3 kids. I get it, right? Every time you have a child, it's It's not because you love another child less, it's because they need all of your attention in those moments. But when you're a kid and all of these things happen in a very specific period of time, you can draw conclusions that aren't the right conclusions. And the dangerous part of that is that then those conclusions become our running dialogue in our minds. They come to define who we are and our lens for the world. And so what I want you to understand is, if you did the exercise from last week and you wrote down your current story, here's what I believe about who I am and what life's about, then today what I want you to do is sit down and understand, well, where did that snippet come from? I'm going to challenge you to change your interpretation or the meaning of that situation. I just gave you a few examples in my own life, right? And I needed to change that. At some point in your life, you have to sit down and look at your story, because you're recognizing that the path that you're going down isn't the path you want to go down. Now, could I have sat here and had the same story my entire life and been successful in the eyes of the world? Absolutely. I would have had clear success in my career, and I have. But at a certain point in my life, I got what we call leverage, right? I got into a situation where I was like, I don't want to be alone. I don't want to not love. I don't want to not share my life. I want to have a relationship with my spouse whom I love beyond measure. I mean, never thought I could love someone as much as I love my spouse and my children. Amazing, right? But to get to that place, I had to change my story. If this year is your year, and it is, okay, it's not an if anymore. This is your year. Then the way that you're going to make this year your year is to make sure the story that you're living, the story that you tell yourself about who you are and what your life is about, your story has to align with your ability to go and make this year your year. It has to support you making this year your year. So today, I want you to sit down and I want you to understand what the story was, right? Because you did that last week. I want you to take no more than 10 minutes to ask yourself the question, what are things that happened to me in my past that caused me to believe this truth about my life? What happened? And I want you to pick out a couple of things, because you're going to be able to remember them. Ask yourself honestly. Okay? And there's a little thing, everybody knows it, okay? I'm going to get a little woo-woo on you for a minute, okay? But what you can do is take your hands and you put them on your heart and you close your eyes. And you do what they call heart breathing for about 2 minutes. You close your eyes and you focus on your heart with your hands on your heart. And what it will do is sync your mind and your heart. And at that point, whatever you speak, whatever comes to you, whatever the answers are will come, and they'll come from your heart, because the story that you're telling yourself was an emotional event that you then put into your brain and made this logical, rational assumption about. So I want you to understand what happened to you to create this story. Okay? That's your challenge. What happened to you to create the story? Because what we're going to do next is we're going to write your new story. Can't write the new one if we don't understand the old one. And you've got to be able to free yourself from the old one. So go and ask yourself, what made me believe this about my life and my story? And I cannot wait to connect with you next week, where we take the next step in making this year your year. As always, go and be legendary.